every time I visit here, I remember how much I like it, and I don't really spend enough time here. The other thing I have to say is you have an amazing Beekeepers Association. It is very impressive. You have such a great resource of information just scrolling on the screens up here before your meeting. The talk that you had from your president starting your meeting it's so invaluable, you have no idea. I heard you guys were having nominations tonight, and I have to say my little bit about being in service and a volunteer on a board. How many of you have been on a board before? So it's kind of an honor. I started beekeeping about 15 years ago, and in the area that I live, we have a Beekeepers Association as well, and it serves 3 counties because there's so little beekeepers in the area. So my whole entire organization would be like the first 3 rows on the right side of this room for all 3 counties. And at that time, I did serve on the board, which was, again, a great honor. But at some point, I realized that I had to do a little bit more. And the Florida State Beekeepers Association, which some of you are wearing shirts from the last time I was here and or from being at the fair, like Jean and Jody, and some of you that I've met and volunteered at the fair, which I am extremely grateful for. The State Association is also a really important asset to us. It's going to be 100 years old next year. Woo-hoo, I think that's so cool. It started in 1920. So when I started volunteering for the State Association, I really kind of kept in mind a presence of all the beekeepers since 1920 that took the leap to be a volunteer and make sure that everyone in the state of Florida has a set of rules and regulations to follow that are just work well for what we need. And they also back up our Florida Division of Agriculture. So our FDACs and our Division of Plant Industry are all backed up by the state. So if there's something that they can't do, that's what we get to do, which is really important. I'm on my 4th year. I'm a little tired, I have to admit. This is a picture of me. I don't A, look like this anymore, and B, I haven't touched a beehive in a while, which is really kind of supposed to be funny, but kind of sad, because of all the hard work that I've been doing for the State Association. But in the 4 years that I've been with the association, we've gotten to a point where we have a positive cash flow position, which is amazing. The fair is doing better. It's been a lot of hard work, but I invite you all, if you have you ever seen, how many of you have been to the state fair? Awesome. How long does it take you to get there from here? An hour? Whew. It's a pretty awesome event. I've actually had the pleasure of seeing pictures from back in the 40s and 50s when they had a honey show that took up like 3 or 4 of these tables of entries. It's impressive. It's amazing, actually. And it's so inspiring to see. And the state fair is huge. I mean, it's ginormous. I've only been since I started volunteering for Florida State Beekeepers Association. I had no idea how cool it was until I came over and started working on it. And it's a really awesome event. The people that volunteer really do enjoy hanging out with each other. I think beekeeping camaraderie is probably a highlight of all of our activities. Wouldn't you guys agree? So we try to fit a lot of that in everything that we do. These monthly meetings are especially good for that, and I do want to mention that our state meeting is going to be a lot of fun in October. And again, you guys had that up on your screen earlier, so thank you. If you have any questions about FSBA, anything that we're doing, or want to get involved, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to help. And even though I'm going to step down off my position of president, I will remain past president for a year, and I'm hoping the board will still utilize me to some extent for something in a minor way. We'll see. Okay, I brought some fun stuff for you guys tonight. The name of the talk I chose for you is Cooperative Beekeeping and Farming with Diversity, which is a broad subject. But I have some nice slides in there for you. But I brought some honeys. Something that I really like about beekeeping is the honeys that are produced. And one of the things I've really enjoyed is learning to identify and taste different honeys from all over the world and get to know them. I also spend a lot of time judging honey, which is really fun. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to enter a honey show. I have, and I really enjoy it. But a lot of us like competitions, we like winning awards, so that's one way that you can do that. So the honeys that I brought for you, it's going to be a little interesting because it's a big group. So I want to make sure this works well for everybody. So I have an idea. One of my ideas is I need a couple helpers. Anybody? Awesome. First thing I need to do is ask one of you to come up and get the box of paper spoons. These are easy to use, and they're really awesome. There's a little bit of a indent in the spoon so you can squeeze it. If you would just make sure and give every row a little handful, and if everybody could take like 3. I was going to try to get through like 7 honeys, but I think 2 or 3 might work. So if everybody could take, you just leave a handful at the edge of the side of the table and let everybody else do the work and pass them down to their friends. So we're going to help each other out with the honeys. If I were to pick the honeys that you guys were going to taste tonight, I would pick, I have 3 from Italy. One of the ones I really want you guys to try is called honeydew. Does anybody know what honeydew is? Of course you do. You want to tell us what honeydew is? Excellent. And what eats it? So it's a sap that comes from, so it's a plant secretion, sugary, starchy, just like nectar. Who eats it? Somebody said it. Aphids. Then what happens? They excrete it, and the bees eat it. A little funky. And I was nice and I told you that before I let you eat it. Usually I wait till afterwards. So I brought you something called metcalfa, which is an aphid honeydew from Bologna, Italy. The reason I have the 3 samples of honey from Italy is because I'm participating in a honey sensory analysis training. And a lot of people that I've been talking to are interested in this. One of the reasons I'm interested in it is A, I love honey. B, I love to eat. C, I think it would be really, really special if the United States had a honey standard. How many of you know what a honey standard is? What would you guess a honey standard is? I know you know what a honey standard is. What would you guess a honey standard is? Excellent. So something that would help us.
Can you repeat what she said?
Moisture content. Okay. So a honey standard, and this is adopted in many parts of the world already. So many countries already have a standard for identifying honey. It does 2 things, and many more, but we'll just focus on 2 things. It allows the beekeeper and the consumer to have an idea of what the composition of honey is. And if it's from a specific plant material, it is specifically identifying that plant material. So if I was to produce saw palmetto honey, and my saw palmetto honey looks like this, and I'll pass it around. You can open the jar, Blanche, it's nice to see you, but don't taste it yet, I want to tell you something. And your saw palmetto honey is darker, with a different flavor. Well, there's a reason for that. The beekeeper may know a little bit about it, but how does the consumer get the information? It's very difficult to do. Well, in most countries, that is a requirement for beekeepers. Their honeys are tested, and if they're claiming they have a polyfloral honey, they usually go through a series of tests, including the sensory analysis, to identify the honey. This way, if a consumer is specifically interested in acacia honey, year after year, when they go to purchase acacia honey, they get to know what it is. And if they buy some and it's not quite right, they'll know why. This isn't exactly what I'm used to, is acacia honey or chestnut honey. We know as beekeepers our honeys can fluctuate a little, and I'll tell you a little bit about the saw palmetto honey. Okay, but first, Blanche, will you do me a favor? Will you make sure nobody double dips in the saw palmetto honey? So I have some squeeze jars where you can actually dispense a little drop on your spoon, but if you're dipping, the only rule is no double dipping. You can have as many of those paper spoons as you want, and if I run out, I have a funny feeling somebody else that's really nice that's been sampling honey might have some spoons that they can lend us, but just promise me you won't double dip. And if you do, don't let anybody see you. So now you can open the saw palmetto and pass it around. The saw palmetto that I brought for you tonight is an early pull honey. This is something that is unique for us. I talk to a lot of people about palmetto honey. Some people love it, some people just can't stand it, kind of like the pepper honey. And I'll tell you a little bit more about pepper honey too. But with this saw palmetto honey, we pull it really early. The love bugs aren't even out yet. And that's sort of a little tip for you guys if you're producing saw palmetto honey, to pay attention to the plant cycle, and then when the love bugs are out and deciding whether you want to take it. off the bees early or not, and that's up to you entirely. You can taste the honey too before you extract it. I mean, you can go in and sample it while it's in the hive. This is another really interesting thing that people don't think of, but I like to share with them. And you can also pull honey by yards and take samples and then decide if you want to do blending or not. Blending is another really, really interesting aspect to honey production and having something unique that you can offer your customers. So we talked a little bit about the honey standard. We're passing around one honey. And just to make sure that we're not here past 9:30, we're going to pass another one down on the right side. The pretty picture at the top is on the screen. I'm going to pass the Mecalfa around. And I'm not picking the right side, my right side, as my favorite, but I'm going to give them the Mecalfa. Take a taste of the Mecalfa. If you don't get a taste of one of the jars that are going around, when they get to the back, if you guys could just pop them on that table back there, and if you didn't get a taste, just get up and walk over and take a little taste for yourself. And I do have some small jars of honey here, if anybody would like any, but not the ones from Italy, of course. So the picture up here, I like to show when I do this cooperative, diversity in beekeeping. It's just what I really admire about honeybees. It's just their social nature, cooperative nature. I really wish that human beings could figure that out. You guys are really good at it. I mean, this is such a pleasure to come to a meeting like this where there's such a large group and such a really great support system for people who are interested in becoming beekeepers. How many of you have bees? That's awesome. How many of you think that our bees need better forage? You can raise 2 hands, it's okay. So we'll talk a little bit about forage too, because if our bees don't have good food to eat, just like us, they're going to be in big trouble. And we're starting to see, some of us that have been beekeeping for a while are starting to see that it's harder and harder to keep our bees healthy without the nutrition and with the increased load of toxicity and also the lack of queens being mated properly. And that could just be due to the sperm not being viable in the drones. But I'm not going to go to chemistry on you guys right now. But I do want to let you know that the basics, keeping your bees well fed, whether you have to supplement them or not, keeping clean comb, watch your hive tool. If you go in a hive and it doesn't look so good, sanitize that hive tool. I mean, just put it outside in the sun, it'll be fine. In the driveway after 10 minutes, it'll be completely sterile. Just kidding. That's a Florida joke. Everything, your smoker, your suit, your jacket. So it's really easy, the close proximity that we keep our hives to one another with drift. There's all these really interesting things that we learn at the beginning. And then as we go through our journey as beekeepers, sometimes we lose sight of them. But their cooperative nature is both an asset and sometimes a challenge for them because of the fact that we get in the way and we manipulate things in a way that makes it harder for them. But with that in mind, it's so fun and it's such a rewarding experience. I like the fact that honeybees start to festoon together in that picture prior to this slide, where they literally show you the shape that they want to build the comb in as they're working on it. I think it's impressive. I like keeping bees in top-war hives with natural combs like this. I do it for fun because I'm a full-time beekeeper and we run a lot of colonies. This is more like something I feel like I can do to give back to the bees. I wish I could just hang out with the feral bees and do bee lining all day and Darwinian beekeeping, but it's not in the cards yet. I still have to pay the bills. So I'm trying to balance my own beekeeping journey out as I go through it with what I think is important to take care of myself and the bees. And it's pretty intense. So this is my family. My daughter Kaya, she found out she was allergic to bees right after we took this picture. She had gotten 2 hives for her 16th birthday, got stung, and had an anaphylactic reaction. It really led me to thinking about how many years she spent in the bee truck with a lot of dust and venom and possibly just, didn't get stung enough and we probably caused her allergy. So if you guys have family members that don't get stung, just try to keep your bee clothing, free from them. And if you have a bee truck like we do that's just full of venom, vacuum it out a little bit once in a while. She's doing good now. She started allergy shots and it's been about 3 years, and she took a sting last year when we were getting bees ready for California, and she was fine. My son in the middle, that's such an outdated picture. He's 14 now, he's taller than me. He wore that once and never wants to go near a beehive again. So, of the three, it's just now my husband, my daughter, and myself. My husband, as you can see, really likes bees a lot. He's been trying to do the bee beard thing for years, and just like a natural beard, that's as good as it gets for him. I tried 2 queens on his chin, it didn't really improve anything, so he's not here, I can make jokes about him. Oh wait, you guys are videotaping this? Oh God. So, cooperatives or co-ops, and this is like my one slide that has words, and you don't have to read it, I can email you guys, but I just put it there because some of the biggest companies that are out there in beekeeping, you may have heard of one of them. How many of you have heard of Subi? Subi's been around for a while. They're a co-op. So all the members, it's a working cooperative. They vote. They are part owners of the company. And it's a really neat model. Again, social sort of behavior for the better good of all. I actually had never seen, but got to when I went to Epimondia recently in Montreal, beaming in Canada. They had a giant, probably like half the size of this room, they had a big booth there, and they sponsored the trade show. And they're also a cooperative, so it's pretty interesting. It's very similar to the model that we use for our local bee associations, nonprofit, all that good stuff. This is a really good friend of ours, and also the broker that takes our bees to California. His name is Bob Harvey. How many of you know Bob? Anybody? Becky, I know you, Bob. You know Bob. This man is legendary in the beekeeping world. He's been a beekeeper since he was 9 and he's 70. This is his queen yard. He's standing near one of his places where just his queen banks, and then he's got some cell raisers near him. And some finishers behind him. He is such a nice guy. I don't know what we would do without this type of situation where we have a beekeeper that has knowledge from so long ago in the same area and region that we live, because things do cycle, plant materials, bees. So we all need a Bob. And if you are like Bob and you have knowledge, the next fun thing you get to do is share it with others. That's why I like to share that slide. Queen rearing's a lot of fun, by the way. This is another fun aspect of beekeeping. How many of you have had this situation happen? Anybody? All the time. This is typical Florida. Driving across to visit with you today, it was also a nice reminder for me of how beautiful the state is, and I just love the topography and the general view of what we see here in Florida. Cows are really cool. They don't really bother bees too much. It's the goats you gotta watch out for, and the donkeys. But the bulls are really cute, actually. I always try to pet them. My husband's like, "You're nuts, what are you doing?" I don't know, I just want to pet the cow. They're cute. But we have a lot of beautiful land here. So one of the diversifications that I like to share with people is public land use is something that we haven't quite figured out. Some of you have. We had a nice talk through dinner about working with the Florida Department of Transportation and inquiring about things. There's public land in the form of parks, state parks. Cities and counties also own a lot of land, typically. I wish they would let us use all of it. St. John's Water Management opened up some leasing to beekeepers last year. We kind of assisted with that through the state. Unfortunately, nobody really knew about it or was able to get to the meeting and bid, and you had to show up in person, so only like 2 beekeepers got all the land, but those leases will continue to be opened up. But the idea is, as we have these conversations, we can work with each other and then help others find ways to use land that's available. I don't know about you, I know development is happening. I really realized that when I got here. It's a beautiful area, but man, dang is it busy. I feel like I'm back in New Jersey. Did I just admit I was from New Jersey? I usually don't do that until towards the end of the talk. I'm in good company. My accent's gone, but it happens every once in a while when I get upset. There's a lot of available land and forage. So with that, I'll say something interesting. Different nonprofit organizations are more keenly aware of pollinators and the importance of them. I had a discussion with somebody from Slow Food, and Slow Food, how many of you know what Slow Food is? A couple? Okay. Slow Food International and Slow Food USA are both fantastic nonprofit organizations that are very interested in making sure everything on the planet has good, clean, and fair food and anything else that you need. Everybody deserves clean water, food, and to be treated fairly. That's the basic model for slow food. But it's diverse to the point of slow fish, slow meat, slow seeds, and now there's slow bees. I'm actually one of the founders of Slow Bees International, and the only way I was able to do it was to be invited from Slow Food to go to an event that they have in Italy. Who doesn't want to go to Italy, right? Does anybody else here want to go to Italy? Who's been to Italy?
No.
Who wants to go to Italy? Slow Food, you can go. Every 2 years they have an event. It's just like Ecomania. It's in Turin. You apply to be a delegate. First you have to join Slow Food. It's like being a Farm Bureau member, and it's just as important. Slow Food has a way of choosing delegates, and you just buy your plane ticket, get there, and they'll take care of the rest. When I went to Turin a couple of years ago, I met beekeepers from all over the world, literally. I was on a bus. First of all, I had a host family. They stopped their entire life just to take care of us. It was ridiculous. Every day, from morning till bedtime, they took care of us where we needed to go, breakfast, dinner, took us out on the town. Unbelievable. On the bus, going back to my host family, I look around and I'm talking to a woman from a valley in France who makes artisanal cheese, and her boyfriend's a beekeeper. And then I look over and there's a guy nodding off, and the woman with him, she spoke English, but he didn't. She starts talking to me and she says, he's the last in his family. He lives in the Himalayas and he harvests honey from Apis dorsata. He's a cliff climbing beekeeper. These are tremendous opportunities. So this is diversity. This is like where it starts to get really exciting. A, we like to eat. B, we like to travel. C, we like bees. We have a lot of fun stuff to do. So within Slow Food now, there are some opportunities, and if you're interested in learning more about that, let me know. This is just a picture of a really cool local farm. How many of you guys work with a local farm in the area? Maybe one that has CSA shares, or you like to go every Sunday because they have the best salad greens around. Nothing like that here? Oh my gosh, you guys have to come visit me. This farm is like a mile from me, and they literally have, I can show up and get enough food for the week. It's unbelievable. And they were awarded a snail of approval from Slow Food by me because of their practices and their sustainability and regenerative farming efforts. But they also hosted our bees. So A, I got to eat well, and B, my bees got to eat well. So it was a win-win. So that's just part of the diversification model. Have both of those two honeys kind of made it around the room? There's the bee. These are the bees at Ground Floor Farm. Well, you guys should just come on over here and get some more honey. All right, let's see. I think I'll give you this one, Blanche. I have to look it up, though. I'll tell you in a second what it is. It's from Bologna. It's partially crystallized. It's a spring polyfloral. I know that there's honeysuckle in it, but I have to look up the other two that are in there. Let's see, on this side of the room, how many of you have tried mangrove honey? Okay, not too many. All right, so we'll go with the mangrove. I have gallberry too, but let's try that. How did you like the Metcalfa?
Two of the jars on this side going up.
Oh, okay. If you have a jar and you've tried it, whoever gets it last, or if it ends up back up front again, just go pop it on the table in the back. And honestly, if you didn't get to try honey, just feel free to get up and do jumping jacks and walk over and taste some honey on the other side of the room. Okay, so mangrove, and I gotta go look this one up. So these are just a few hives in the farm that I showed you in the prior picture. See, I like the clicker down there. This is why I can't have a microphone. Okay, the one that I just passed around on the left side from Italy is spring polyfloral, honeysuckle, white clover, and linden. This is another farm in Martin County, and this is another opportunity for beekeepers. Once you start keeping bees, you'll find that everybody wants one thing. What is it? Honey. What's the other thing they want? Bee removal. Number 1 and number 2. Number 3, bees. Maybe 2 and 3 are neck and neck. It's possible. This nice farmer really wanted to keep bees. So instead of keeping bees right away, they hired us to come out and take care of bees for them. And eventually, when they were ready, I handed over the smoker. Really nice folks. And we assist them from time to time. But just another thing in the repertoire of your diversification in your beekeeping journey. If you decide you want to become an educator, or you want to do the buddy system. Say you want to keep bees, but you're not ready to take it on by yourself. Find a buddy, do it together. Same thing with land use. Maybe your property isn't quite right for a couple colonies, but you have a friend that has a parcel that will work and the forage is adequate. If you guys team up, A, it's less of an expense, and you will either get really mad at each other and never be friends again, or things will work out really well and you'll make some honey and have a really good time. I'm just kidding. I tell lots of jokes. That's me. I don't look like that anymore either. I have a lot of pictures of me in these slides that are outdated. This is really a fun thing. This is a Whole Foods in Palm Beach County. And I forget the name of the nonprofit, but you might be able to read it in the slide. Basically, they asked Whole Foods, and this is something you guys can do for fundraising, so now we're into the fundraising aspect of diversification. Whole Foods was willing to donate 1% of the sales from 3 of their stores for one day if we attended the stores that day and sat outside and met and greeted the customers. And I was actually holding a bottle of honey from the beekeeper that I started beekeeping with, who sold honey at Whole Foods. So again, be friendly like you guys are, because I saw it on the slide when I got here. I thought it was really cool that you guys will take a business card from a beekeeper that's part of the group and put it on your website, and everybody helps one another. That's how I operate as a beekeeper too, and I really admire that you guys embrace that. So this is just a little bit of time spent helping the cause, and they raised over $13,000 in one day. Whole Foods donated, and the money went to buying nukes for the local beekeeping associations in that area. And basically it was a hive giveaway program. People would sign up for bees and they would get their first hive for free. And then when their bees grew to a point where they could be split, and they had a mentor assigned to them, the bees would be split and that hive would be cast off and given to the next person on the list. It worked pretty well for a little while. It ran out of steam, lack of volunteer efforts and follow through, but it's a really good idea. But you definitely need some commitment. It's a great idea, but this is another idea. Who here sells bees? See? You can sell bees too. One of the things I was talking about earlier with someone is pollination. And pollination contracts, and I mentioned it to you guys earlier because I introduced Bob. It's a really difficult thing to do and it's really tough on the bees. And I'm not discouraging you. If you want to do pollination, I highly recommend you give it a whirl. If you ever need any help, consult a broker. Get to know the farmer really, really well. Have everything really well spelled out. Beekeeping for a really long time, even just using land, has been very reliant on the handshake method. It's really hard to do that nowadays. How many of you have put bees on property and then had the landowner call you and tell you to move the bees? I'm trying to raise my legs, my hands, it happens. So really, think carefully before you engage in something like pollination or land use. What you need. You want to provide a service to the landowner and the farm, which is admirable, but you also want to be protected. Bee sales are another source of revenue, but follow all the guidelines in order to be registered and do so through the state. Make sure you have your Queen line European stock lineage documented, and give the person you're selling the bees to a copy of your number, your registration number, and a receipt so that when the inspectors come out, they know where the bees came from. Make it easy for everybody. This lady is really cool. She tie-dyed her jacket. She was very enthusiastic. Here's another important aspect. Sometimes this is done in a volunteer effort way, but sometimes you can actually earn a couple bucks if you want, just to go out and speak to a group. You get more invites than you have time for, honestly. And if you start doing this all the time, how many of you go out and speak? It's fun, right? Until the little guy tries to open the door on the observation hive. They always ask, can I open this? No, you can't. I actually love going out and speaking to groups of kids. It's a lot of fun. The only ones that I find really challenging, I get the calls from Montessori school for the 2- and 3-year-old group. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. To the adults, I see them all running out of the room. I'm like, where are you guys going? Come, you gotta come help me. Here's another picture. This is something I mentioned earlier. Honey judging. It's really interesting. In Europe and other places of the world, honey and other bee products have been in competitions like this for hundreds of years. And as I mentioned to you in the beginning of this talk, Florida State Beekeepers Association had an amazing honey show at our state fair. I saw a picture a couple weeks ago. I think it was Minnesota State Fair. Yeah, I think it was. Did they have an amazing number of entries?
19 exhibits.
Oh my gosh. I must have seen like 40 entries just in the light amber honey. It was impressive. We can do that again, right? I think it's really fantastic. Most people are very proud of the honey and bee products that their bees and they make together. And it is another asset to you if you can tell your customer that you won an award. And judging in these styles of shows is one thing, but there are other types of shows. How many of you have heard of the Fancy Food Award or the Fancy Food Show? I don't know about you, but I don't have cable. I kind of like whatever you stream things nowadays. But I think cooking shows are kind of all the rage. And so are food shows and food show awards. So there's all different types of food shows, and they definitely usually have a honey category. Did you know that some of them award cash prizes? They do. Georgia Beekeepers Association is having their annual convention and honey show next week, and I think they have over $5,000 in cash prizes through the honey show. That's not too shabby, right? The Good Food Awards is one of the ones I was just referring to. This one happens out in California. They have everything from coffee and charcuterie all the way through to honey. And if you win it, it's pretty amazing. The other asset is sometimes they help you land new clients in the form of wholesale accounts, and they could be out of state. So if you're in this to sell honey, or you want to grow a brand, or you're interested in keeping diversifying, like you're going to start making soap or lip balm or a whole bunch of different products from your bee products, you might like having somebody that you can get to help promote you and meet new clients, new stores. This is just a picture from the Institute of Northern Ireland Beekeepers Association Honey Show. Again, I love to travel, I love to eat, I love all the things that my bees do. So if you haven't been to Northern Ireland, they have a fantastic honey show, and you may have something that you do in your beekeeping practice that they would enjoy hearing about. So you may enter yourself in the ring for being a speaker one year, or maybe you'll start the judging program and be there as a judge. And while you're there, you'll get to go to Belfast and see the Titanic Museum, and you might see one of the cast from Game of Thrones walking around. I mean, it's pretty exciting stuff. I'm just kidding. Game of Thrones cast is probably not around anymore, but when I was there, they were. I was like looking all over the place for them. Here's another interesting thing. This is a group of women that met on a pilgrimage in Greece, and I was part of that, and it was literally called a Bee Priestess field trip. How did I find that? I'm not sure. Social media. About 15 of the 30 women you see here are beekeepers. It was amazing. The other thing I have to say, and if you haven't been exposed to this, when you leave your local area and you start meeting other beekeepers and seeing other practices that are done in other parts of the world, when I got to Greece, not Athens so much, not the mainland, but when I got to the island of Crete, it was literally alive. It was buzzing with excitement. I got there and I thought there were swarms. I was looking all over the place. I just thought there were swarms overhead. It was just normal forage activity for them. The people that were with me were like, what's wrong with her? I had never been to a place that had been so active for bees with forage that it would be like that. I mean, we notice that when our pepper trees are in full bloom or other things are happening, but it's not something that we deal with on a regular basis. So it was pretty exciting. How many of you have been to Greece? Would you go back? Did you go to Crete? Oh, go to Crete. Do yourself a favor. If anybody wants to go in on a little house there, like a 4 or 5 super kind of place, I'm in. Here's another interesting aspect, and again, food related because I like to eat. This is a fermentation residency in Woodbury, Tennessee with Sandra Katz, and we went to Long Hungry Creek Farm I had no idea I would meet beekeepers in this scene either, but I did. What's really funny though is they talked us into going to this farm and they told us we were going on a tour. And by the end of the day, we had loaded the entire back of the pickup with roots that we pulled by hand. And then he got us all the way back to the residency and we proceeded to wash and clean and shred all of that. And at the end of it, I was like, did you just trick us into making like 200 pounds of kimchi? That's not nice. We had a lot of fun, really. It was great. But it was a beautiful farm, a biodynamic farm, and again, it was paradise for bees. So the people that owned the farm had a beekeeper that had bees there, and if you guys are like me, I bought honey while I was there, of course. I mean, I bought honey here tonight. I won't see it till next week, but I had to do it. Do you guys want to try another honey, by the way? Okay. Here's another diversification. Who knows what that is? Woot woot. Anybody? Excellent. Who makes mead? Anybody? Excellent. I make lots of mead. I confessed at dinner that I don't drink a lot of alcohol, but I do like to brew it. I like to taste it. I'm going to pass 2 honeys around. This one isn't a true honey, but it is delicious, and it does have chocolate in it. Anybody not like chocolate? Haha, I didn't think so. It's literally just chocolate and honey, and you can experiment with this type of stuff. I brought it just to show you that in the culinary field, there's a lot of interest in things of that nature right now. And I also like to eat chocolate, and I don't do sugar, so I'll do honey then. Hang on, I gotta open this jar. Okay, the third of the Bologna honeys is going around too. So you've got chocolate honey sauce, literally 2 ingredients. Oh man, I left the clicker down there again. You guys didn't tell me I was going to exercise a lot tonight. And now I have to tell Blanche what type of honey she's eating. Hang on. Well, that's a good one. So this one's from Bologna too. It's a summer polyfloral and it's sunflower and alfalfa. It's really delicious actually. So mead. It's a really popular thing right now. There's meaderies popping up all over the place. Cideries too, but meaderies more. There's a lot involved in trying to open a meadery and making alcohol and selling it legally. Anybody who has ever tried to do it knows that. It's going to be a long wait kind of thing, but it is really amazing. I personally enjoy making mead. We have, in my opinion, and I am opinionated, Florida has some of the most delicious honeys. Wouldn't you all agree? There aren't too many publications on the subject. There are very few books on the subject of honey. But the ones that are out there, almost every honey we have here available in Florida usually find their way into those books. And I've had people from Europe that have been judging honey for a really long time back me up on that and say that you have some of the most delicious honeys in the US and specifically in Florida. So imagine what would happen if you take said delicious honey and turn it into mead. It would also classify as a really delicious mead. And I can attest to that. This is the National Honey Show. Have you ever heard of it? It's in England. It's really awesome. If you get a chance, I highly recommend you go. And they have over 220 classes in the honey show. It's immense. The trade show was unbelievable. I would liken this event to Apimondia. It was really, really well done, and it was a great time. Switching gears. What do we got here? Anybody? We got some pollen. Yes, e-bread, that's what I want to hear. So in Apimondia, I saw a stall and I walked up and I was shocked. The person had a machine that they pass brood combs through that don't have brood in them anymore but have e-bread in them, and it basically shreds off the wax. You have to freeze it first, and the little bee bread pellets fall out the bottom in a tray. I want the machine really bad. My husband wouldn't let me buy it. I think he's going to get it for me for my birthday next year and surprise me. I'm just kidding. I don't know if he will, but I really want one. So we use bee bread a lot in our honey production. A lot of people, you were talking about allergies and pepper honey earlier. A lot of people really feel like a little bit of bee bread mixed in their honey helps a lot with allergies. I particularly like bee bread because it's basically the bees have done a tremendous amount of work to collect the pollen, and they got it back in the hive. Usually when we collect pollen, we take it off the bees as they're entering the hive. They haven't had a chance to chew it up, masticate it, mix their own enzymes with it, pack it in the cells with nectar, and have it sort of, grow beneficial bacteria, which I think probiotics are pretty important both for bees and for us. So basically the theory is a little bit of bee bread is very nutritious. Dry pollen, on the other hand, is not stable unless it's been dried, heated, or it's kept refrigerated because it's really a fresh product. So, and pollen's another thing I'm really concerned about. How many of you think, and we mentioned the honey standard earlier, but how many of you think that some of the pollens may possibly be contaminated?
Yeah.
And what process do we have to guarantee that what we're ingesting is not contaminated? We don't have one. So that would be another thing I would wager we should have a conversation about and discuss and make sure that we're doing right by everybody. Because not only do we want the bees to have a really healthful source of pollen, but if people are going to ingest it, we really should make sure we know what we're talking about. And it's really hard to do that. But bee bread is another interesting thing you might like to work with, not only for your honey, for your customers, but if you're making mead or if you're doing other things, other food products, you might enjoy the flavor of it. For me, it's like a burst of flowers. There's a lot going on there. Not to mention the bee vitamins. Here's another interesting thing. We talked about selling bees. What about doing lessons or maintenance, hive maintenance? Some people really want to keep bees, but they're just not ready to do it on their own. But they have a little bit of a budget to take care of that, and they'll let you come over and we'll pay you to take care of the bees with them or teach them something so they feel like they can do it. And at some point, they're going to call you and break up with you. Say, I got it. I don't need you anymore. Don't worry, that'll only last like 1 month. But it is a really fun thing. And honestly, I will tell you, the best bees I see when I am working bees are bees like this, where the person is new to beekeeping and they only have a couple hives. Really, things have shifted quite a bit in commercial beekeeping over the last few years. When I started beekeeping, I showed up at a commercial bee operation with Ross Conrad's Natural Beekeeping book, and they laughed at me. And they said, all your bees are going to die. You have to treat your bees, you have to do this, and you have to do that. And I was like, no, I don't. I'm going to keep them naturally. Ha, ha, ha. I did okay for a little while. I mean, the first year the curve was awful. Grow to 10, drop to 2, grow to 20, drop to 3. That's the learning curve, right? I finally got a rhythm, and we started growing a lot of bees. This is back when I had a job, and my husband had a job. We weren't beekeepers when we met. Isn't that crazy? We were both full-time beekeepers now for 10 years, and we both quit our day jobs. And we're really tired. And broke. I'm just kidding. I told you I make a lot of jokes. I have to make a lot of jokes. So we worked on the premise of natural comb, splitting hives, breaking the brood cycle, all the things that you would think that would be helpful to keep bees healthy. Making sure we had well-mated queens. At one point, we were buying queens, even from really good friends that we really, really like. Great friends. We'd have lunch with them, we'd hang out with them, but we wouldn't buy queens from them anymore because the queens weren't doing good. So we started learning how to raise queens. Queen rearing is a lot of fun, by the way. And anybody can learn to graft, and anybody can figure out how to set up a starter and a finisher and see a cell through to maturity and introduce it. It's not the hard part. The hard part is selecting your drones, getting the drone congregation area saturated, making sure your queen mates well, and knowing what to select for. It's an art, and it would take a long time to do a fantastic job. And some of the people I really admire do a fantastic job. But I will tell you, even as a young learning queen rearer, our bees started doing much better once we started raising queens for ourselves. And that lasted for a few years. And then all of a sudden, kablooey. The last few years, in particular last year, was the one that we noticed not treating for mites, because we did try to omit excessive treatments. And when I say excessive treatments, taking counts and doing what you think is best for your bees is paramount. Your IPM, your integrated pest management for your beekeeping repertoire is very, very important. For a long time, we just rode on without doing those mite counts, and we would occasionally treat after pepper when it was really bad, and again after the bees came back from California. Those are the 2 times that we were treating, if we were treating. The other thing we do in the summer is we break everything down into 5-frame nucleus colonies, and we break the brood cycle when the dearth is on. It happens naturally anyway. Last year was a humbling year. Even with all that being done, we had high losses. Our losses on average for the last 10 years were about 15 to 20%. Last year we suffered a 50% loss after California, and we've struggled to recover in this last year. We're doing okay now. Actually, right now, the bees make us look like excellent beekeepers. They look awesome. I mean, if you have a good queen in your hive, your bees are doing great right now. And the nectar flow is really starting to go gangbusters. But doing this type of thing is really fun for me. I enjoy it when somebody calls me up and I have the opportunity to go out and look at their bees. And again, those are some of the most productive bees I'm seeing and the best. And if they're not, usually it has something to do with the health of the queen, the condition that you have the bees in, whether you have a cavity too large or too small, when they've swarmed and you didn't realize it, and then they got set back or taken advantage of. So it's usually the beekeeper. I hate to say that. Nobody really likes to hear that. It's not the most fun message to deliver, but I usually take responsibility when we have losses. Say, I must have done something wrong. And then when I say that it might not be, it's just something I have to take a look at. So it's not like I'm a horrible beekeeper. I just have to look and see if the queen's doing okay, and if she's not, I need to fix that. So there are some awesome checklists. So any of you use checklists when you go through your hives? You keep records of which queen you have in your hives and how old she is and how she's doing. I'm not good at that. I need the app. I need to start with the app on my phone. I'm just kidding. We actually, we do 2 things. We write on the outside of our hives a lot. So there's Sharpie writing. It looks like hieroglyphs and graffiti, but there's all kinds of marks on the outside of our hives. And occasionally my husband switches the lids and I go out and I'm like, oh my God, what's going on in this hive? And then I calm down and I look and I go, oh, it looks great. Here's a picture of some cells from when we first started raising queens, when everything was going great and we had great takes. And it's really fun. It's pretty magical. Now, this year, we were so busy with honey production and honey sales that we were buying cells from another beekeeper to get queens, good stock in our hives. It's just a cute picture. I like when honeybees show up when I'm at the market. Occasionally it's a little bit of the thrill-seeking kind of scary thing. I'll be at a market and the bees are really hungry and all of a sudden there's not 1 or 2, there's like 80. And I've got them landing on my finger drinking honey and the people are like screaming and running away from my booth. So, and then I'm like, can you put me inside next year? I can't be outside anymore. And here's another fun aspect for us. We like the farms because they feed us, and then we get to feed the goats. I don't know about you guys, but having the time away from being so busy and distracted and doing all the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, showing up at a farm like this and having a couple minutes to interact with nature and goats is really, it kind of brings things to perspective for us. We love the fact that we can do this full-time. As you know, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. But I think there's a lot of diversification opportunities out there. And so as you guys are already friendly in the way that you compete with one another and you support each other, you'll also help each other by saying, you know, I'm not going to make soap. Becky, can you make the soap and can you make the lip balm? There's lots of really great ways that you guys can work together to be diversified. And I hope some of the honeys and examples that I brought to you tonight are helpful in your beekeeping journey. And if you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Or if there's something I didn't cover that you'd like to talk about, I know that you'll kick me out at 9:30, and that's probably a good idea because I have to drive home. But let me know if you have any questions after I'm done. And thank you, Becky. So love bugs are one insect I'd be concerned about. Obviously, there's not any control for the love bugs. I have never experienced love bugs interfering with Brazilian pepper. The last few years, Brazilian pepper hasn't been awesome. Last year was pretty good, and we didn't have Melaleuca blooming at the same time, and it tasted delicious. I was actually able to sell Brazilian pepper as a wildflower last year. But I haven't had any love bugs in Martin County at the same time as the pepper. I really don't even know, other than hoping the bees produce some honey before the love bug population increases. I know in St. Lucie County, which is the county above where I live, the love bugs were so bad this year that most of the people that keep bees there did not make any supplement of honey, which is pretty bad. The love bugs compete at the flower site for nectar. So right around the time when the palmetto is secreting copious amounts of nectar, the love bug population is also at its highest level of population, and they compete at the flower with the honeybee. And the honeybee is deterred, A, by that, the competition, and also, I believe, their odor. They have a scent that the bees don't like. So it's not... That's a bummer. I'm bummed to hear that. I didn't talk about this, but now that we're talking about Brazilian pepper, you know that Brazilian pepper is being knocked back with the thrips? Okay. So Brazilian pepper is an invasive plant. I understand that, and I understand that it's so invasive that a lot of people have to invest a lot of efforts trying to knock it back, and it's going to come back anyway. The thrips that they're using to try to knock it back, they're going to talk about it at the FSBA meeting, by the way. So if you're interested in hearing more about it, try to come to the meeting, and we'll try to record it too. It's going to take a really long time for the thrips insect to do anything, if anything, a very small percentage. But what we could do together, cooperatively and socially, is suggest to the powers that be that we work on increasing forage while this pepper plant is being knocked back. So I would posit to everyone here that if we have concerns that the bees don't have enough forage, which I think we would all agree that the bees don't have enough forage, that we identify what plants we could, that are quick growing, easily accessible, native to our territory and region, that we could sort of get some. I know there are companies and grants available that would try to support us in making sure these plants are planted. And we could probably get something through legislation where it would be done in the easements. Definitely not in the medians. I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but they've tried to do these pollinator roadways in Europe. And they were putting wildflowers like in the center of the highway. And the bees were all like, getting squashed by the cars. So we have to be careful where we do this. But there's another major disease besides citrus greening, besides knocking back the pepper, and they've been trying to knock Melaleuca back for a long time, but it's still there. Have you noticed how bad the palm trees look? Okay. I told my husband how bad I thought they looked a couple of years ago, and again, of course, he always thinks I'm nuts. Like, what is she talking about? And sure enough, there's a Texas bronzing. It has another name too, but palm trees are not in real good shape, and that's another major nectar flow for a lot of us in the summertime. So I think we need to do some really serious looking into working with the people that are in charge of plant material and making sure that we have better forage for our bees out there and other pollinator species.
I had the thought of trying to get the cities and counties to plant trees on the roadways. Obviously, the wildflowers in the region, I understand that problem, but something about trees are simply shade trees. They do nothing for anybody else but provide shade. We should substitute those with bee-friendly plants. This would serve two purposes.
I think it's a brilliant idea, and I don't see why anyone would say no. Anytime I speak to the public, one of the questions I ask is, do you care about pollinators? And I never meet anybody that says no. Everybody's always pro-pollinators, and they want to know what they can do to help. We're the beacon, we're the lighthouse, we're the people that can deliver the message, and then we have to make the effort to communicate with the powers that be. The Florida Native Plant Society is a huge asset. The Xerces Society, huge asset. If we get in touch with them and get a list, there isn't really a good current list for Florida or for our territory. So if you have a beekeeper, like I have my Bob Harvey, and they've been around for a really long time. And we have our Melito files that you guys had up on your screen, what's blooming and what to do for your bees. Those are 5 or 6 plants, but there's probably more. What's blooming? January, write it down. What's blooming? February. These are the lists that we want. And yeah, we need to mix it up. We need flowers, shrubs, trees. Trees can feed a lot of pollinators, but they take a long time to grow. There's not too many quick growing trees that are going to produce flowers, but there are some exceptions. But flowers grow within a short period of time, and shrubs. So shrubs are going to be a lot around longer than the flowers in most cases. So let's find out what grows really well here, tolerates our conditions. That's supposed to be funny because our conditions are pretty tough. You're going to put sunscreen on your plants. And then make a plan. And again, I'm all for it, so I'd like to work on something like this. And thank you. Any other questions?
You talked about the honey center and the pollen center. What sort of infrastructure and instrumentation is needed to do the certification?
To implement it?
Yeah.
So the USDA is the only governing body that would be able to regulate something that grand, and they are working on the standard. In Florida, we actually have a honey standard, but there's no requirement to have your honey tested. But I would go so far as to say that state by state, if a USDA standard is adopted, that state by state, we would be able to find a way to get the legislation written so that beekeepers would have the ability, the knowledge and resources to get their honey and other bee products tested. And I would say our wax too. I don't know, did I mention about Apimondia's honey show? The honey show had a couple hundred entries, but over 50% of the honey did not make it in the honey show because of adulteration. That was a lot of honey that didn't get judged. And when you first think of that, you might think, oh, that beekeeper shouldn't have done that. Why did they do that? That's not cool. But think of it this way. What if you have your bees here, and you're producing honey, you have 10 hives, that's a nice group of hives, and then a beekeeper comes in and puts 500 hives over here with an open feeder. So your bees are obviously close enough to hit the open feeder, so it wouldn't even be to your knowledge that your bees were foraging with corn syrup or sugar water, and or it could be antibiotics or other treatments. So the standard would then help, make sure that we're not serving that type of product to the consumer.
My question is more about who does the testing?
That's going to be determined after the regulations are set in place. There's only a couple of labs right now. You can go to Texas A&M, but you have to pay independently. I'm hoping once there's a standard, as a state, we can find the labs that are available here and make them available to our beekeepers so that they know where to go. As of right now, there's just a handful, and it's all independently done. There's QSI, which is international, and then there's Texas A&M in the United States, and there are some labs in Florida that the University of Florida, Jamie Ellis's lab, has access to a couple of the labs that they would send pollen and other samples to for analysis. Becky, do you know if we have any resources for labs that do honey testing? So we could try to work on something like that. Maybe we're going to have a nutrition panel discussion at the Florida State Beekeepers Association meeting. I'll try to get it on the agenda that we discuss a resource of labs and see if we can't find out what's available.
I would have thought more important than the status of pure honey is adulteration. People are now adding corn syrup and selling it as pure honey. That's far more concern for me. The bees make a damn good job, and they don't catch it until it's pretty damn good.
Sure.
So, but if people start adding other stuff, that's another story.
Sure. There's a lot of imported honeys, and a lot of the things that were being used to adulterate honey were easily detectable, but now they're using things like rice syrup and some other sugars that are very difficult to monitor and determine that they're in there. So we have a long way to go with this topic. But I think it's very important. Not only, I would personally like to know what's in my honey. I would be thrilled if I was able to send my samples of honey and get some information on the pollen and the main nectar, and to know that accidentally my bees weren't foraging someplace open feed or contaminated, because that would give me some confidence to offer to the consumer. And I think that's important. I hope you guys do too. Was there any other questions?